and share with you about some of what God is doing around the world through Friends, and how you can participate in that. And this is, I guess, your Mission Sunday. I don't know if you're aware, this is also World Quaker Day. The first Sunday in October every year is World Quaker Day, and friends all over the world are taking the opportunity to tell their communities about Friends and who Friends are, and have open houses and opportunities to do mission right in their own communities. So you've chosen a great day. It's your Missions Day. As Scott has said, I am the Director of Global Ministries at Friends United Meeting. I've been in that position about 3 years. Prior to that, I was in the mission field in Kenya for 9 years. And prior to that, I'm originally from Massachusetts, and I'm still a member of New England Yearly Meeting. I've been here living in the Richmond area for 3 years, and so I still feel a little bit like a foreigner in Indiana. So this is definitely cross-cultural for me to be living in Indiana, but it's a blessing, and I'm enjoying the opportunity to get to know friends in this area. So as I understand it, you've invited me to come and share with you about 2 particular areas where friends are doing really quite incredible work around the world: Cuba and Samburu. And so I'm going to share some stories and some photos, and kind of introduce you to your own brothers and sisters in Christ. I want to sort of start by saying what do I believe mission is? Because I think there have been some dysfunctional concepts of mission in the past that have to do with sort of power dynamics and paternalism and privileged people bringing something to other parts of the world. And I really work out of a partnership model where we partner with each other because we're called to partner with God. So for me, mission is, and I think for Friends, mission is finding out what God is doing already and joining in. And so when I'm going to share with you about Friends in Cuba and Friends in Samburu, these are really vibrant, growing communities of friends that are locally led and organized and growing out of their own mission work in their own communities, and they are inviting us as the global community of friends to participate with them in the amazing things that God is doing. I'm going to start with some slides about Samburu and just tell you some stories about Samburu. What you have up here, and it's a little hard to see, is a map of Kenya. Kenya is in East Africa. Kenya has the largest concentration of Quakers of any country in the world. It's a little hard to gather statistics, but it's a fair estimate that there are more Quakers in Kenya than in all the rest of the world combined. Now, most of those Quakers are in the western part of the country, sort of in that, yeah, you're not gonna be able to, you can't read the town names, can you? No. Anyway, the Quakers are concentrated in the western part of the country. That's where Quaker missionaries first went in 1902 and brought Quakerism to that community, and that's now, as I said, the largest community of Quakers in the world. In the 1950s, the Quakers from western Kenya went up to the northwest to an area called Turkana, and founded a mission there among a nomadic people group who had been really isolated from any Western contact up to that point. And the Turkana are still considered an unreached people group. There's less than 1% of the Turkana people are Christians. Turkana Friends sent missionaries to Samburu. So one unreached people group reaching another unreached people group. And in 1995. Now Samburu, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of in the center of the country if you go straight north from Nairobi. And so, yeah, thank you. It looks no, it's okay, you can go on to the next one. It looks closer to the center of the country, but actually it's one of the most difficult places to reach of anywhere where Friends are working in the world. I took this picture on a day that I was driving there. It takes several days to drive there because many of the roads are impassable. It is not possible to drive through this mud, so I had to get off the road and sort of find my way through the bush. Those are thorn bushes, and so then you burst a tire, and there is no town around there where you can get your tire repaired, and so getting there is kind of a big deal. And so these Friends are very isolated. There's been a significant amount of violence in that region of the country, and so it's difficult for them to travel. There are bandits on the roads. So this is a group that is pretty isolated. This is the Samburu people. Their culture is largely intact. They have not been westernized by colonial processes because of the isolation of where they live. They are related to the Maasai tribe. Their language is related, but they are not Maasai. They're a separate tribe, but many people have heard of the Maasai, and so you can think that there's some similarities there. These are Quakers. This is really how they look and how they dress. This is not a costume they put on for a special event. This is the way that they live. Their culture, as I said, is very much intact. And I think that as Friends, we see that God is already present in every culture, in every people group in the world, and doesn't require the destruction of a culture in order to receive the good news of the gospel. But that every culture has within it the seeds of that good news. And so that's one of the things that's really important to Samburu Friends, is that they find the ways in their culture that are gospel affirming and life affirming. There are also things in the Samburu culture that are contrary to the gospel, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the next slide shows, this is the main mission compound in Samburu. The building in the back there is actually a brand new church that was built because the previous church on the compound had been made with traditional construction with mud, and it had been destroyed in a windstorm. And so this is now made of cinder block, and it's more sturdy. And you can see some of the church members gathering. That's actually like a leadership, like praise and worship team meeting, gathering under the tree in front of the church. Also on this compound is a dispensary, which is like a health center, and a very large primary school. And I'll say a little bit more about the school in a few minutes. But you can see the area is arid, as in desert. It's not an easy place to live, and the people are semi-nomadic, which means they travel seasonally to look for pasture for their animals. This is Samuel Atole, and he is the director of Samburu Friends Mission. He is the first Samburu to direct the mission. Prior to his coming into that role in about 2012, the staff leadership had been Kenyans from other parts of the country, and they were considered foreign missionaries because they were from a very, very different part of the country, different ethnic group, different culture. They were definitely a cross-cultural ministry. This is our first indigenous leader of Samburu Friends Mission. He trained at Friends Theological College, which is the Quaker seminary in Kenya, and then was given the opportunity to lead the mission. And I think we're really proud of the fact that it is now an entirely indigenous leadership in Samburu Mission. That there are still 2 pastors and 1 health worker who are Kenyans from other parts of the country, but all of the main leadership positions are Samburus. And yeah, next slide. Thank you. This is exciting. I took this picture on the day that the Samburu mission opened its own bank account. These are the treasurers of the mission, and we're standing in front of the bank. The photo's a little washed out, but they're holding deposit slips. This is the very first time they've ever done a transaction in a bank. These are the treasurers of the mission. This is where when you gather money for missions, these are the people who are handling it. We've been participated in training and equipping them to know how to do that, and they are enormously proud of the fact that they are managing their own resources. This is a typical Samburu girl. I would say probably 11, 12 years old. That would be the age of marriage for most in the traditional Samburu culture. And so one of the things that the Friends mission looks a lot at is the status of girls and women. Because this is actually really an issue that emerges out of the community as one of the gospel priorities. When you receive Jesus, then you understand the lives of women having inherent value in the lives of girls. So a girl like this would be married at about age 11 and immediately start bearing children. That's not healthy for her. Her body is not ready for that, and it's not healthy for her children. It leads to higher infant mortality and maternal mortality, and increases the cycle of poverty for the whole family. In addition, this might be a little edgy for some of you, but the Samburu tribe practices female genital mutilation, and they do that at the time of marriage. So this girl would be preparing for that ceremony. That, of course, if you know anything about it, has a devastating effect on women's bodies, and is also really a life-threatening procedure, and a devastating effect on women's lives beyond their bodies. This is a woman of maybe about 17 or 18 years old with a baby. She probably has a couple of other children as well. This is in our church. She's a church member. But one of the things that is really important to the Samburu Friends is to delay early marriage, or to prevent early marriage. One of the most important ways we can do that is to keep girls in school. Because if a girl is attending school, she's much, much less likely to be married off. But school is expensive, and if a family has scarce resources, they're traditionally more likely to prioritize the education of their boys than of their girls. That is changing, actually, because in a more modern economy, there becomes an economic value to girls' education, and so fathers perceive that they can get actually, it used to be that the more education a girl had, the lower her dowry was, because an educated girl is uppity. That's changing, where now the more education a girl has, the higher her dowry is, because she has earning potential in her husband's new family. So, next slide. We sponsor girls to attend school. These are some of the girls who are in school, not married, not circumcised, and in fact, we're continuing as some of these girls finish high school to send them to college, and college education is an unheard of level for boys as well as girls in a community like this. So it's really making a big impact. And I asked a group of my Samburu colleagues. We were riding in a car together, and they were all men. All of them either pastors or other forms of church workers. And I said, so are all of your wives circumcised? And they said, absolutely. It's not possible for a woman to get married if she's not. Of course they're circumcised. Why would you even ask that? I said, what about your daughters? They said, no, it ends in our generation. We will not circumcise our daughters. Our wives had to be, our daughters, no. And I was incredibly encouraged to hear that. It does take time to change, and it's not possible for outsiders to come in or for laws to be passed to say, this practice is exploitative and discriminatory against women and now it's illegal, so stop doing it. Like, that doesn't work. What works is people perceiving a change in the inherent value of women and girls, and the disconnect between the gospel message and the traditional practices, and that growing that change from within the community. And so I'm really encouraged to see that as a priority, not imposed by outside, but emerging from the community. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about education in Samburu. These are students at the Friends Elementary School. They are in a dance it's a cultural presentation, dance and singing group. There are competitions all around Kenya for these cultural dances. And this group, our little Lutobole Friends School choir, won the national competition in Nairobi for cultural presentation, and we're super proud of them. They are really proud of their culture, and this group is also a peace group, which means that the dances that they do, the songs that they sing, the messages that they bring when they travel to other schools, when they go to competitions, are all about peace, about nonviolent resolution of conflict, which is, of course, one of the messages of Friends everywhere in the world, but has particular relevance in a community like this where there is a high degree of violence. And so these are some of some of the students that are coming through the Friends School. I want to mention another aspect of the Friends School, which is in this society, many children have to work, taking care of the family's animals during the day. And it's just an economic reality. In a traditional school setting or school system, there's no way that they would be able to attend school. Lotolale Friends School instituted a night school for children. We got a solar panel that can run one fluorescent tube. We have several teachers and about 150 students gathered under one fluorescent tube who come to school at night after having worked all day, taking care of the family's herds. They come to school at night and they are actually progressing. We have now, I think, up to like 4th grade. They're moving through the grades. They're going to be able to sit for their national exams, even though they are prevented from attending school in any kind of regular way. This is not something the government, the government doesn't really know what to do with non-traditional schooling because it's a very rigid system. So we're just doing it. But these kids will be allowed to take the exam and they will be recognized as having earned their education. A little bit about the church. This is inside that brand new church that's built of cinder block. It's actually before the windows and doors were installed, so you can just see there's vacant spaces in the building. But they're filling it with worship. This is a typical Sunday worship, packed with people, mostly women and children. It's a little more difficult to entice men to come to church. Also, men tend to be out with the herds and not closer into the population centers. But the church is full, and it's full of people who are excited. This is one of the places where church planting is happening most rapidly among Friends in the world. 5 years ago, we had 4 pastors. Now we have 11. They're scraping together a budget to pay for 11 pastors, but even 11 is not enough for all of the new church plants. So we have a partnership with Friends Theological College in Kaimosi, which is in the western part of Kenya. That's our pastor's training college, where these people don't speak any English, and they don't even really speak a whole lot of Swahili. They speak their traditional Samburu language. So they can't study at Friends Theological College, which is an English language college. But FTC has opened a satellite campus here, actually in this church in Lotolale, that is teaching them in their language, and they are earning like a basic Bible college degree through the satellite courses with the seminary, so that we can train up more leaders. There's an enormous need for more and more and more leaders because the church is growing so rapidly. Next slide. We've been given a piece, or the Samburu Friends have been given a piece of land in a market center called Losuk. This is a group of the leaders praying over that land. I'll just say as a tangent, I love when they do this. They pray with their hands like this. I mean, the way that we would pray like this, they do this with their hands, and it's really powerful. It's an invitation. Enter me, fill me. So you can see them doing this as they're praying over this land. This is a piece of land in a growing population center where the community has asked Friends to build a ministry center that would also be a income generating and a kind of a commercial center. So, for instance, we might have a tailoring shop where we could be teaching young women dressmaking skills and making and selling product and earning income for those women and also earning income for the church. So we have actually North Carolina yearly meeting has given us some of the money that we need to build the ministry center that we have in mind here. But that's still a project that needs additional funding, but it's gonna eventually mean that there's a source of income for the mission that's not dependent on external donors. Right now, all of their pastor salaries is covered through donations to FUM. They don't have any other source of income, and that's not sustainable, obviously. Two more slides about Samburu before I move to Cuba. These are water filters. I don't know if you've heard of biosand water filters. It's a very sustainable, low-tech, but extremely effective way of making water safe to drink by filtering it through layers and layers of sand and gravel. And we've trained, this is now a group of young men, and they have been trained in how to make these filters and to distribute them in the community to improve the health of the community, because waterborne disease is a huge burden on health. And then speaking of health, this is Samburu Friends Dispensary, which is a health center. It's actually the only medical facility available for a very large radius. And the building has been condemned by the government because, it's totally inadequate, as you can see. The building has been condemned, but the government doesn't want us to actually close it because there is no other service for these people. But every year the government comes to us at FUM and says, when are you going to replace this building? We really can't have this continuing. This is not an adequate health center facility. This is functioning as the hospital. Women give birth in here. It's all just kind of one room, so you might have a woman in labor, and then somebody else comes in with malaria and is seen in the same room, and another person has a motorcycle accident and a head trauma, and they're coming to the room, and it's totally inadequate as a health facility, but it is serving the people, and so nobody is willing to close it. We need to find a way to upgrade it. So Samburu Friends are reaching their communities. As I said, the church is growing. They're planting new churches at a rate of 4 or 5 a year. The gospel is growing in this area, and what we do as the international family of Friends, you and the other churches in this area and in other countries around the world, is to come alongside what God is doing already in Samburu, and to empower and equip Samburu Friends in reaching their communities. I want to shift now to Cuba, which is the other area that you've asked me to talk about, where a totally different context, but in some ways the same story. The church is growing rapidly in Cuba. God is doing great things in Cuba, and Cuban Friends are the leaders of that work. They don't need folks to come from outside and lead the mission. But what they need is accompaniment and support, and to know that as a global family of Friends, we're walking together in God's purpose. So this is a map of the whole island. On the west, you can see Havana. There is one Friends church in Havana, but all the rest of the Friends churches are over in what's called the Oriente, the east, centered around a city called Holguin, and that's where that black box, this slide is showing that black box blown up. There are 14 Friends churches in Cuba. The typeface is probably too small for you to read, but the red ones are full monthly meetings, and the green ones are church plants and mission outreaches. And there's more being created every year. Quakers originally came to Cuba in 1902 at the invitation of the United Fruit Company, that they would be a church for the company executives on company property. And the Friends Church said, no, that's not what church is. And they built the church off the company property and outside of company control, and said, we're the church of the people, not of the company executives. So it was a little different from what the United Fruit Company thought they were getting in inviting Friends Church, but it is really a church of the people. The missionaries that first came to Cuba were a combination of American Quakers and Mexican Quakers. And the Cuban Friends Church was very large at the time of the revolution in 1959, and about 90% of Cuban Friends left the country at the time of the revolution and are here in the United States. A lot of them in Miami, but many around the country. There are Cuban Friends in all of our yearly meetings. That left Cuba yearly meeting decimated. They lost almost all their leadership. A tiny fragment, a remnant remained. And for a long time, it was illegal to carry out any kind of repair on a church building during the years in which Cuba was a neo-Eastern communist country. It's still a communist country, but there was a change to the Constitution in 1992 that no longer declared it was an atheist country. Now churches are legal, and they have there's freedom of religion in the Constitution, and churches can carry out their activities. That 1992 changed a lot for the situation of Cuban Friends. And so they were able to carry out all of this deferred maintenance. I mean, this is a Caribbean country where you get hurricanes every year, and they hadn't been able to so every church had lost its roof by 1992. So we can see the next slide. This is a church in a city called Puerto Padre. This is the church building. It's been beautifully repaired. Pretty much all of the church buildings have now been repaired since 1992 till now. It's taken a long time to get that done. The next slide shows a rural church in a place called Calabazas, which means pumpkins. This is a very small building, but the people are like, hanging out the windows, and the church is so packed. Next slide. This is now the next sort of phase of things. This is a former Friends school, which just in the last few months, the government has returned the property to the Friends. It's a ruin, but there's so much pride among the Friends about their former schools. It's no longer legal to run a private Christian school in Cuba. So they've got this building, and they're not going to turn it back into a school. They're going to turn it into a ministry center. And particularly this church, this particular congregation has a sense that one of its ministries is to people with drug and alcohol addiction. And so they're going to turn this old school building into an addiction recovery center as part of their ministry in their community. So this is, you can see a group of American Quakers who are touring this old ruins and hearing about the vision of the church for how this place can become, again, a lighthouse in the community. Cuban worship is unlike anything I've experienced, and I've traveled among Friends in many, many, many countries. Cuban worship is so vibrant and full of artistic expression, and an enormous amount of the airtime during worship is led by children and youth. So this is a worship in which she's probably about 13 years old, and she's dancing Like up and down the center aisle of the church, there's a lot of liturgical dance in their worship. And this was so tremendously moving, this dance that she did as they were singing. The next slide shows, this is a brother and sister. She's 15, he's probably about 13, and they are leading worship music. The next slide shows some much younger children, probably around 7, who are doing a pantomime, sort of acting out a Bible story. So much of the worship in Cuba is child-focused and family-focused. The churches are full, and I have yet to attend worship in Cuba where there weren't people standing on the edges and in the doorways and looking in the windows because there were no seats. The churches are packed with people and with such a sense of optimism for the future. The children and the integration of children and older people is something I don't experience anywhere else. In 2 of the largest churches, Ibarra and Holguín, are in large urban areas, and both of those churches have a water ministry, where both of those churches have large-scale, sort of industrial-scale water purification systems, and they give water for free to the community. Tap water is not potable, it's not drinkable, so people come to the church to collect water, and there's certain hours of the day that you can come and get water. So these are some people collecting water. You can see they have jerry cans, and the pastors are out in that collection area, praying with people, just chatting with them. These aren't church members. These are poor people from the community who are coming to get water and to receive ministry and prayer. Also, this church, this is Ibarra, they have a deal with the municipality where in exchange for a greatly reduced water utility bill, they provide all of the safe drinking water for the hospital in the city. So the water definitely is a ministry of the meeting where the whole community knows they can come to the Friends Church and receive water and also counsel and prayer. This is Maria Yi. She is the main pastor in Holguín, which is the largest Friends Church in the country. This is actually taken in the courtyard where she's doing the water ministry. She's meeting with people as they're coming, receiving water. She's also very active in a program that is distributing Bibles. They go into like city parks, have a big revival, distribute thousands and thousands of Bibles because people don't have access to Bibles. And she's one of the leaders of the Bible distribution program for that whole part of the island. She's highly respected throughout Cuba as a Christian leader beyond just Friends. This every year on the 14th of November, they have a sunrise worship down at the seawall in Ibarra to remember that the missionaries first arrived on the 14th of November in the year 2000 and brought the Friends Church to Cuba. And so this is just some of the members at that sunrise, remembering their past and with just an enormous optimism for their future. And that's the last slide, and we can just let that stay there. I think that when you think about what is God doing around the world? God is touching people where they are. God is touching their hearts, in their homes and in their families, and in their churches, and empowering them to reach their neighbors. And in both Samburu and Cuba, these two communities that you've asked me to share with you about, the church is growing exponentially because people are reaching their neighbors. And then the role for those of us who are halfway around the world is not somehow to bring the gospel to people who don't know it. That's what neighbors do, because they can touch each other in that intimate way. But what we can do is be partners, is to be encouragers, is to be equippers and empowerers. And I guess I'll just finish up with one of my favorite metaphors for the church is the body of Christ, a metaphor that runs through the letters of Paul. And I think I overheard this Sunday school class out here in the corridor was talking about the body of Christ imagery. And if you think about the global community of friends as a body in which each part has its own identity, its own uniqueness, its own shape and function, but yet we are all connected. And there's a couple of places, once in Colossians and once in Ephesians, where Paul actually talks about connective tissue, about like the ligaments that bind these parts of the body together. And to me, that's what a missions program is about binding these different parts of the body together so that we work in harmony, in coordinated motion, under that headship of Jesus, that as a body we know ourselves to be bound to those who may be far away and unknown to us, but known intimately to God, just as we are known intimately to God. And that ligament that is our missions program is the thing that allows us to be in fluid motion, to be in healthy growth as a body, as a worldwide body of Christ. So I leave you with this image of your sisters and brothers, members of you, members of your body, connected to you in essential ways.